Agent Jax Harlan, a lone spy with a past betrayed by the organization, receives an assassination order for Victor Reyes, the notorious cartel boss wreaking havoc in Miami. During a nighttime ambush at the harbor, Jax is nearly taken down by his former teammate Ethan, forcing him to flee and suspecting the CIA of hiding a larger conspiracy. At the end of the chapter, Jax finds a clue leading to Reyes's hideout in Mexico, but a deadly chase through the damp streets leaves him severely injured. Blood splatters across the deck, dark red under the flickering neon lights from the giant cranes. Jax Harlan grips the handle of his dagger tightly, the cold steel blade still trembling after the fatal stab into the throat of the mercenary. He collapses on the floor, eyes wide open, mouth gurgling with blood. Jax does not blink, quickly wiping the blade on his tight black sleeve, then rolling away to dodge a bullet from an AK-47 firing from the dark corner. The Miami harbor at night is not a place for the weak. It is a hell of rusty containers. The smell of salt water mingling with gunpowder, and the crashing waves sound like the whispers of death. Jax, 38 years old, with a body as solid as granite, short black hair, and grey-blue eyes filled with invisible scars from past missions. He was once a star of the CIA, nicknamed Ghost for his ability to vanish like a spectre on the battlefield. But 3 years ago, during a failed assassination in Kabul, the organization abandoned him, leaving him to rot in a Taliban underground prison. Jax survived by instinct, and since then, he became a solitary predator, taking jobs from nameless shadows. Today, the order comes from an anonymous source, Victor Reyes, Doc 23. Cargo ship El Diablo. End him before dawn. Victor Reyes, the infamous Mexican cartel boss, who has turned Miami into his chessboard. He does not just deal drugs, he traffics weapons, trades lives, and even sells secrets of the U.S. government. Reyes is tall, with a face scarred from bloody executions, and a sneer that always reveals his yellowed teeth. He is here, on the ship, carrying a shipment of illegal weapons from Mexico, preparing to distribute them to local gangs. Jax has been tracking him for 3 days, sneaking through the damp streets of Little Havana, where the sound of salsa mingles with distant gunfire. He crawls across the deck, his body blending into the shadows of stacked cargo containers. His heart beats steadily, breath slow, the first lesson of an assassin control. Through a gap, Jax sees Reyes standing among his henchmen, his deep voice growling. This shipment will make Miami kneel. The CIA thinks you control things, you're just puppets. The soldiers laugh boisterously, their guns held loosely. Jax draws his Glock 19 from his thigh holster, silently chambers around, his thumb caressing the trigger. 20 meters away, one shot to Reyes's head, and the mission ends. But then, a familiar figure glides into view, Ethan Crow, Jax's former teammate from their training days at Quantico. Ethan is tall, with messy brown hair, and sharp brown eyes now flashing with betrayal. He wears a black suit, an earpiece in his ear, whispering into a mic, target confirmed, Ghost. Hold your position. Ethan's voice echoes in Jax's earpiece, causing him to freeze. Ethan, what are you doing here? Jax whispers over the comms, but only receives static in response. His heart tightens. Ethan is not an ally. He is the one who betrayed Jax in Kabul, trading him for dirty money from the cartel. The first gunshot rings out from behind, not from Jax. A burst of fire from an M4 rifle tears through the air, the first round grazing his ear. Hot as fire, Jax rolls, instinctively firing back, taking down the nearest soldier with a shot to the chest. Blood sprays like a fountain, staining the deck red. Betrayal. Jax roars, charging through the container barricade, his body twisting to dodge bullets from Ethan. He is there. On the crane. M4 aimed directly. A twisted smile. Sorry. Buddy. The organization has changed. Reyes is ours now. Jax does not stop to ask questions. He jumps onto a cargo container, his foot slamming against the metal edge with a deafening clang, then delivers a spinning kick to the shoulder of an approaching soldier. The man falls, his gun flying away. Jax seizes the AK, firing a short burst. Bullets hitting the chests of two others. The sound of metal clashing. Screams of pain mingling with the crashing waves. Reyes has fled, disappearing into the ship's hold. His henchmen pouring out like a pack of wolves. Jax weaves through, his dagger glinting under the neon lights, slicing through the wrist of a man raising a gun. Hot blood splashes onto his face, salty on his lips. Ethan jumps down from the crane, the two men face to face on the blood and seawater slicked deck. Why did you do it? Ethan Kabul. You let me die, Jax growls. Glock aimed straight at his old friend's forehead. Ethan scoffs, tightening his grip on the M4. The CIA needs Reyes alive. He is our source of weapons against China. You are just a sacrificial pawn. Ghost. The confession cuts into Jax's heart like a knife. He pulls the trigger, but Ethan rolls away, firing back. The bullet embeds itself in Jax's shoulder. A sharp pain like fire, blood soaking through his shirt. Jax grits his teeth, lunging forward, using the butt of his gun to strike Ethan's jaw. He staggers, but manages to throw a punch into Jax's stomach, causing him to double over. They wrestle, unarmed. On the shaking deck, Jax locks Ethan's neck with his muscular arm, whispering, "You will pay." But the ship's horn blares. Reyes has activated the engine. The ship begins to slide out to sea, waves crashing violently. Jax releases Ethan, jumps over the railing, and plunges into the dark water. The cold seeps into his bones, but he swims against the current, clinging to a floating life buoy on the shore. Jax drags himself onto the damp sand, his shoulder bleeding, his hand groping for the USB hidden in his boot, the clue he obtained from the first soldier. Inside are the coordinates, a villa on the cliff in Mexico, Reyes's main hideout. "You think I will stop?" Jax mutters, his eyes gazing out at the Black Sea, where the ship has vanished into the fog. But the sound of an engine roars from the damp street behind. Headlights sweep across, illuminating puddles reflecting pink and purple neon. Reyes's henchmen are on his trail. Jax runs, his legs heavy from the injury, diving into the maze of narrow alleys of Miami Beach. Gunfire chases him, bullets embedding into the crumbling brick wall. He rolls over a trash can, throwing a knife back, hitting the thigh of the closest pursuer. He screams, collapsing. Jax jumps over a rotten wooden fence, his heart pounding, blood dripping in a long streak on the wet asphalt. A black SUV bursts out from a dead end, headlights blinding. Jax leaps onto the hood, smashing the windshield, his knife stabbing into the driver's wrist. The vehicle swerves, crashing into a lamppost, exploding into bright red flames. He rolls onto the ground, gasping for breath, clutching his shoulder. The remaining men retreat as the sound of police sirens echoes. Jax leans against the wall, watching the USB glimmering under the moonlight. Mexico awaits, and with it, a truth darker than betrayal. He will hunt Reyes, not for the order, but for justice, something he lost long ago. Which area are you listening to this story from? And what time is it where you are right now? Leave a comment below so I know you are still healthy and fully focused on this story. My dear friend, we will continue right after this. Jax wakes up in a shabby motel on the outskirts of Miami. the wound bleeding, reminding him of the betrayal from his old friend Ethan. He hacks into the CIA system to confirm that Reyes is not just a target, but the key to a global arms smuggling network. Deciding to infiltrate Mexico alone, Jax contacts a local informant, but is ambushed on the highway, leading to the first intense gunfight. The blinding sunlight pierces through the tattered curtains, stabbing into Jax Harlan's eyes like a knife. He jolts awake, his right hand instinctively touching his left shoulder, where Ethan's bullet had torn through flesh. The blood has dried, forming a rough black scab. But every movement sends a sharp pain radiating like fire. This motel on the outskirts of Miami is the last refuge for drifters, the walls stained with yellow spots, the musty smell mingling with old cigarette smoke, and the distant rumble of trucks serving as a reminder that the world never sleeps. Jax sits up, his mind spinning with images of Ethan on the deck, the twisted smile, the cold confession. The CIA needs Reyes alive. He grits his teeth, pulling the broken mirror hanging on the wall closer. The wound is deep, but luckily it only grazed the bone. Jax takes the first aid kit from his backpack, gauze, antiseptic, and a few black market painkillers. The alcohol sizzles on his skin, so painful that he has to bury his face in the pillow. Sweat pouring down like rain. You survived. Ghost, he mutters, reminding himself. 3 years ago in Kabul, he survived torture. Through long nights in dark dungeons with the sound of whips cracking and the laughter of enemies. But the betrayal from Ethan, the brother he once shared beers and secrets with in Quantico, hurts more than the bullets. Once done, Jax sits in front of an old laptop on a rotting wooden table, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The screen displays the dark interface of the CIA system he hacked in long ago, a loophole he deliberately left from his time as an agent. Search Victor Reyes. Files appear like a waterfall, intelligence reports, satellite images, and encrypted emails. Reyes is not just a drug cartel boss. He is the center of a global arms smuggling network, supplying rifles, grenades, and even missiles to terrorist groups from Mexico to the Middle East. And the CIA, they know everything. An email from Ethan's superior, keep Reyes alive. He is the source for the campaign against China. Ghost is a liability. Eliminate if necessary. Jax's heart pounds. Not from anger, but from the harsh truth he is just a pawn. The organization he once swore loyalty to has now turned him into an enemy. He deletes the hack traces, closes the laptop, his eyes looking out the window where trucks pass through the dust. Miami, the city of neon lights and criminal darkness, now feels like a giant trap. Reyes must die. Not for the order, but for justice for his victims, children killed by illegal ammunition, families shattered at the border. Jax thinks of his sister, missing in Mexico 8 years ago, perhaps caught up in Reyes's web. This time, I will finish it, he whispers, clenching his fist until it turns white. The decision comes as quickly as lightning. Infiltrating Mexico alone, with no allies, no support. Jax calls the local informant, Maria Vargas, a former Mexican police officer now working as a black market guide at the border. The old phone number, but she still picks up after 3 rings. Jax, you're alive. Reyes is hunting you. Maria's voice is hoarse, mingling with mariachi music from the background bar. I need a way into Tijuana. Secret. She scoffs over the phone. $20,000. And you owe me a life. Meet at the I-95 gas station. In an hour. Jax hangs up, packing his gear, Glock, dagger, USB with the coordinates of Reyes's villa, and a few small grenades hidden in his jacket. He drives the old rental car onto the I-95 highway, the Miami sea breeze blowing through his messy hair. The shoulder wound throbs every time the car bounces. But adrenaline masks the pain. The gas station appears under the pale afternoon sun, a few trucks parked alone, the smell of gasoline mingling with the scent of grilled meat from the roadside diner. Maria is waiting, her slender figure in an old leather jacket, her black hair tied in a ponytail, her sharp brown eyes scanning like a she-wolf. She is 35, a scar running across her cheek from a cartel hit, but her smile remains warm upon seeing Jax. "You look like hell," she says, hugging him quickly. Reyes has eyes and ears everywhere. "My route is safe. But you have to drive a truck disguised as a smuggler." They exchange cash, Maria handing Jax the keys to a small truck. "Fake documents. Follow the signs to Mexico in Tijuana. Avoid the main roads." Jax nods, a rare feeling of trust creeping in. Maria once saved him at the border when he nearly died of thirst in the desert. He starts the engine, the motor roaring, and speeds into the flow of traffic heading south. The highway stretches ahead, the afternoon sun painting the asphalt red. The radio broadcasting news of an explosion at the Miami harbor, the aftermath of last night. Jack smirks. "They won't find me." But then, the rear-view mirror flashes. A black SUV, tinted windows, speeds up from behind. Just a few dozen meters away. Jax's heart tightens. "Maria." "They're following!" he shouts into the radio. But only static responds. The SUV accelerates, pulling up on the right. The window rolls down. The barrel of a machine gun pokes out. Gleaming in the sunlight, bullets slice through the air, embedding into the truck's bed with a metallic whine. Jax floors the gas. The truck shakes, swerving into the next lane. "You bastards," he roars, his right hand drawing the Glock from his thigh holster, firing through the window over his shoulder. The first bullet shatters the SUV's windshield. Glass shards flying everywhere. The chase erupts like an action movie. Bullets from the machine gun rain down, one embedding into the underside of Jax's truck. Smoke rising from the tires. He swerves, avoiding a civilian car panicking on the shoulder. The wind howls in his ears, his heart pounding like a war drum. The SUV closes in, a second gunman sticking out, tossing a grenade. Jax sees the round object rolling on the road. Adrenaline surging, he swerves sharply. The truck sliding, tires screeching on the scorching asphalt. The explosion behind him shakes the ground, metal fragments flying everywhere. The rear window shattering. Jax does not stop. He fires again, the third bullet hitting the SUV's tire. The vehicle swerving but still staying close. "You want to play, I'll oblige." He tosses a small grenade from his pocket, the bomb rolling under the enemy's wheels. The second explosion is larger, the SUV flying into the air, flipping into the roadside ditch, engulfed in bright red flames. Jax gasps for breath, his hands trembling on the steering wheel, blood from his shoulder soaking through his shirt. The truck speeds on, the border sign to Mexico appearing hazily in the twilight. But he knows this is just the beginning. Tijuana awaits. With Ethan and Reyes, ghosts from the past, the Mexico border emerges under the crimson sunset like blood. Barbed wire twisting like a venomous snake amidst the golden sand desert. Jax Harlan slows the truck, the engine roaring weakly after the wild chase on I-95. Smoke from the tires still lingers, mingling with the dry desert dust seeping through the broken window. His shoulder aches, blood seeping through the hastily applied bandage. But adrenaline still courses through his veins, keeping his cold, grey-blue eyes wide open. "Tijuana," he mutters, looking at the worn sign 5 kilometers. This border city is the gateway to hell, where the cartel rules with guns and knives, where dusty streets hide bloody executions beneath a vibrant tourist facade. Jax parks the truck in an empty lot by the road. where smuggling convoys gather like a pack of wild beasts. Old trucks line up, drivers rolling, hand-rolled cigarettes, whispering in sharp Spanish. He steps out, his leather jacket covering his wound. A baseball cap pulled low over half his face. Maria had warned blend in with Rico's crew. He smuggles for Reyes. But don't blow your cover. Jack scans the area, spotting Rico, a chubby man with a white goatee. Checking the cargo. Yo. Amigo. Jax calls, his voice feigning a thick American accent. Need a spot on the truck, I've got goods from Miami. Rico glances at him, squinting under the brim of his cowboy hat. Then nods. Get in the back. Don't ask anything. They set off as the sun fully sets. The convoy rolling through the customs checkpoint with fake documents. The border guards glance over, accepting a thick envelope from Rico, then waving them through. Jack sits cramped among a pile of wooden crates containing contraband, rifles and ammunition tightly wrapped. The smell of machine oil mixed with male sweat makes him nauseous. But he remains silent, his mind spinning with plans. Tijuana is Reyes's stronghold, winding cobblestone streets, flickering neon bars, and late-night gunfire like fireworks. He needs information about the cliffside villa, where Reyes hides after the harbor incident. The truck stops in the heart of the city at midnight, the sound of cumbia music echoing from roadside stands. Jax jumps down, slapping Rico on the shoulder. Thanks, buddy. I owe you a tequila. Rico scoffs, revealing a few missing teeth. Pay up at La Sombra, the underground bar on Calle Obscura. Ask for El Lobo. Jax nods, blending into the crowd. Drunken tourists, wandering prostitutes, and men in leather jackets with guns hidden under their arms. The air in Tijuana is heavy, the stifling heat carrying the smell of grilled tacos and cigarette smoke, mingling with the metallic scent of blood from dark alleys. La Sombra lies deep underground, the entrance through a rusty iron door behind a taco stand. Jax knocks 3 times. Whispering the password, Maria provided, Lobo come la noche. The door creaks open. A bouncer with cartel tattoos on his neck scans him from head to toe, then nods. Inside is a miniature hell, dim red lights illuminating liquor-stained wooden tables, laughter mingling with the clinking of gambling chips. Smoke fills the air. Men crowding around a pool table. Women dancing seductively on a small stage with raunchy salsa moves. Jax sits at the bar, ordering a double tequila, his eyes scanning for El Lobo, Maria's informant. The scarred bartender poured liquor into a filthy glass. El Lobo is over there, he whispered. Glancing back, Jax turned his head, and his heart skipped a beat. Ethan Crow sat there, leaning against the wall, holding a whiskey glass, chatting with a Mexican in a white suit, a subordinate of Reyes. Jax recognized from the CIA file. Ethan wore a black shirt, the collar open, revealing an old unit tattoo, his brown eyes now cloudy under the neon lights. He laughed loudly, patting the Mexican on the shoulder. Reyes will love this shipment. The CIA guarantees border security. The words cut into Jax's heart like a knife. Ethan was not just a traitor. He was working for the cartel, selling out the organization for gold. Jax tightened his grip on the tequila glass, the tempered glass cracking under his fingers. Rage surged, burning like the liquor in his throat. He remembered Kabul. Ethan promised to support him but disappeared when the Taliban came, leaving Jax to face the whip and darkness alone. You, Jax whispered, standing up, his tall frame gliding through the crowd like a ghost. Ethan turned, his face pale as he recognized him. Jax. No way. He stood up abruptly, fumbling for the gun hidden under his shirt. But Jax was faster. He lunged forward, grabbing Ethan by the collar, and punched him square in the jaw. The sound of breaking bones cracked, and Ethan staggered back into the pool table. The balls scattering, the bar fell silent for a moment, then erupted. The Mexican drew his gun, but Jax turned, breaking his wrist with a sharp hook. The gun flew to the floor. The sound of metal clanging. Ethan sprang up, charging at Jax with a professional punch from his Quantico days. Jax dodged to the side, feeling the wind whip past his ear, then countered with an elbow strike to Ethan's ribs. He groaned but did not give up, delivering a low kick aimed at Jax's knee. Pain shot up from an old wound, but Jax gritted his teeth, locking Ethan's arm with his muscular arm, throwing him down onto the sticky wooden floor. They struggled amidst the wreckage, overturned tables and chairs, shattered glasses underfoot. Ethan clawed, his nails scratching a line across Jax's cheek, hot blood running down his chin. "You don't understand. Jax Reyes controls everything. The CIA needs him to counter China," Ethan growled, trying to squirm free. Jax pinned him down, his knee pressing into Ethan's chest, a dagger glinting under the red light. "You sold me out in Kabul. Now you're selling out the whole country." Why? His voice was hoarse, filled with rage and old pain. Ethan twisted his mouth into a grimace, blood oozing from the corner of his mouth. "For money, and because you're too idealistic. Ghost. Reyes has a mansion in the desert. Meeting with the big bosses tomorrow. Go die there." Gunfire erupted from the door. Reyes's men stormed in, AK barrels pointing everywhere. Jax released Ethan, rolling away as the first bullet struck the floor just inches from his face. He jumped onto the bar, kicking a bottle of liquor into the face of the nearest guy, glass shattering everywhere. Ethan seized the opportunity, scrambling to his feet and rushing out the back door. Jax chased after him, but a burly man blocked his path, swinging a gleaming machete. Jax dodged, the blade grazing his shirt, cutting a long line. He countered, punching the man in the throat, then pivoted to break the wrist of the machete wielder. Blood sprayed, and the man collapsed. Jax dashed into the dark alley, the sound of gunfire echoing behind him. He zigzagged through the rotting trash cans, leaping over a low iron fence. Ethan had vanished into the night, but his words lingered like a curse meeting in the desert. Jax stopped at a street corner, panting, his hand brushing against the fresh cut on his cheek, the second scar from an old friend. Tijuana swallowed him in darkness. But now he had a direction: the Mexican desert, where Reyes would reveal himself. "You got away this time." "Ethan," Jax whispered, his eyes glinting under the crescent moon. "But next time, I will finish it." The scorching sand of the Mexican desert burned under his feet, like thousands of needles piercing his flesh through worn leather shoes. Jax Harlan crawled along the ground, his solid frame blending into the golden dunes under the blazing midday sun. Sweat poured down like rain, soaking his black jacket now stained with red dust, dripping onto the homemade explosives he was setting. Each grain of sand stuck to the cut on his cheek from the brawl at La Sombra, reminding him of Ethan and his whispered words: "Reyes is meeting in the desert tomorrow." A convoy from Tijuana. Jax had run all night through dusty roads, stealing an old SUV from an abandoned farm. And now he lay in wait 2 kilometers from the meeting point, an empty space between sharp rocks, where the wind howled like a hungry wolf. The vast and merciless Sonoran desert, the horizon blurred under the rising heat. Cactus bushes jutted out like desiccated corpses, and not a single cloud shielded the sun's scorching rays. Jax checked the detonation wires, a simple system he rigged from loose electrical wires and explosives obtained from the black market in Tijuana. 4 bombs buried deep under the thin layer of sand, connected to a detonator hidden in his backpack, just 1 shot from afar. he muttered, his eyes glued to the binoculars. His shoulder still throbbed from an old bullet wound, but the pain now felt like a companion, driving adrenaline through his veins. Reyes would come here with a convoy carrying weapons, the largest shipment from Mexico to the U.S. according to Ethan, and Jax would bury him under the sand. Time dragged slowly, the sun scorching his darkened skin, making his throat dry like sandpaper. Jax took his last sip of water from the flat canteen, the salty taste of sweat mixing in. He thought of his sister, Sarah, 8 years ago. She went missing at the Mexico border, perhaps caught up in Reyes's human trafficking ring. For Sarah, he whispered, his fingers caressing the handle of the dagger hidden in his thigh. That was the only remaining motive. After the CIA turned him into a solitary predator. Suddenly, dust rose from the distant horizon. The convoy appeared, 3 armored trucks leading the way, followed by SUVs carrying mercenaries, engines roaring louder than the wind. Reyes sat in the middle vehicle, a tall figure with a cowboy hat obscuring half of his scarred face. Jax's heart raced, not from fear, but from a sharp focus like a knife's edge. He waited for the convoy to roll over the first mine, the first wheel pressed on the sensor, but nothing exploded. Stay calm, he told himself, his finger tightening on the detonator. The second vehicle passed, dust swirling. Then Reyes's vehicle, Jax, pressed the button. The first explosion roared like thunder, sand flying everywhere, ripping apart the undercarriage of the lead truck. Bright red flames erupted, metal shards raining down like hot iron. Screams echoed, mercenaries leaping from their vehicles. K-47 seconds aiming wildly. Ataque, ataque, they roared, firing indiscriminately into the air. Chaos erupted like hell on earth. Jax rolled out of position, dodging a barrage of bullets sweeping over the dune where he had just lain. Sand flew into his eyes, burning. But he sprang up, drawing his Glock, firing 2 precise shots. The first bullet lodged in the chest of the nearest soldier, who fell, dark red blood spreading on the yellow sand. The second shattered the head of the second man, brain matter splattering. Next, Jax roared, charging toward the remaining convoy. A large mercenary, his face covered in cartel tattoos, charged at him with a gleaming machete. Jax dodged to the side, the blade grazing his arm, cutting a shallow but searing line. He countered, delivering a low kick to the man's knee. Hearing the sound of breaking bones, the man crumpled, and Jax plunged the dagger into his throat, blood spraying like a fountain, hot and splattering onto his face. The convoy was in disarray, tires screeching on the sand, gunfire erupting continuously, drowning out the howling wind. Jax weaved through an overturned SUV, his body twisting to dodge a bullet from the machine gun mounted on the roof of the vehicle behind. He leaped onto the hood, smashing the windshield with the butt of his Glock, then shot the driver. The bullet pierced through his shoulder, causing the vehicle to swerve and crash into a rock. Flames erupted, black smoke billowing. Jax jumped down, rolling on the scorching sand, his heart pounding. Through the smoke, he saw Reyes. He leaped from the vehicle, handgun in hand, shouting orders to his subordinates. Protect me, Ghost is here. How did he know? Had Ethan sold him out again? Jax charged forward, the dagger gleaming, taking down 2 more soldiers with lightning-fast stabs, one to the gut, intestines spilling out mixed with sand, the second to the neck, blood spraying like a fountain. But there were too many of them. 10, 15 men poured out of the truck, guns firing continuously. Bullets whizzed past his ears, hot and stinging. One lodged into his backpack. Tearing through the fabric, Jax rolled behind a rock, panting, sweat and blood dripping onto the sand. Almost there, he thought. His eyes locked on Reyes. He was running toward the last vehicle. Only 30 meters away. Jax fired cover fire, taking down 2 soldiers blocking his path. Then charged out. Close combat was brutal. One man charged at him with a battle axe. Jax dodged, using his knife to block the axe's blade with a clang, then spun around to kick the man's jaw. Teeth shattering. He fell, and Jax stabbed through his chest, feeling the blade pierce through ribs. Blood coated his hands. Slippery. But he did not stop. Another man shot from behind. The bullet grazed his left shoulder. The old wound split open. Blood gushing out. Pain searing like fire. Jax gritted his teeth, spun around, and shot the man in the head, brain matter exploding onto the sand. Reyes was closer now, only 10 meters away. He turned, his scarred eyes wide with terror. "You're dead for sure." "Ghost," he roared, drawing his handgun to fire back. Reyes's bullet struck the rock beside him, fragments embedding into Jax's cheek. He charged forward, leaping over a fallen soldier, dagger raised ready to stab. But then, smoke. A smoke grenade rolled from the truck, exploding in a blinding white cloud. The acrid smoke stung his eyes, causing him to cough. His vision blurred. Jax choked, rolling to dodge a hail of blind fire from the soldiers. Through the smoke, he saw Reyes's figure disappear into the last vehicle, the engine roaring, speeding away across the desert. "No," Jax yelled, firing wildly into the shadow, but only hitting a tire. The vehicle swerved and then accelerated. The remaining soldiers surged forward, machine guns firing like rain. Jax retreated, rolling toward his SUV, his shoulder bleeding profusely, his vision blurring from pain and smoke. He jumped into the vehicle, hit the gas, the tires spinning wildly on the sand, racing back toward the border. Gunfire chased after him. One bullet struck the truck's bed with a loud thud, but he escaped. The desert swallowed the chaos behind him, leaving only smoke and corpses mixed with sand. Jax drove with one hand, the other clutching his shoulder, blood soaking the steering wheel. "Almost there," he whispered, his eyes fixed on the horizon where Reyes had disappeared. Now, he needed medical attention. Los Angeles, the city of artificial lights, where he had an underground doctor. But the wounds were not just on his shoulder. The last shred of trust in the past had died under the hot sand. The blue neon lights from Hollywood Boulevard filtered through the broken window, casting flickering streaks on the rotting wooden floor of St. Agnes Church. Jax Harlan sat on the last pew, darkness enveloping his tall, weary frame after the long journey from the Mexican desert. His shoulder was crudely bandaged, the wound from the smoke grenade still oozing blood every time he moved, staining the light gray shirt that now reeked of dust and sweat. Los Angeles, the city of fake dreams and real darkness, had never welcomed him warmly. The streets outside bustled with shiny cars and laughter from bars. But in this abandoned church, there was only the sound of the wind whistling through the gaping roof and the scurrying of mice. Jax checked his Glock one last time, quietly chambering around. I then glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. Lena would arrive. Lena Reyes, a name that didn't sound like a cartel boss. Just a bizarre coincidence, was a 32-year-old investigative journalist with short red hair, sharp green eyes, and a smile that could hide an entire secret network. She had saved Jax 2 years ago when he was wanted after the Kabul incident by leaking fake documents to distract the CIA. Now, after he called from the Mexico border, she promised to bring information about Victor Reyes's weapons network. "They're not just trafficking guns," she said over the secure phone line, her voice whispering like a breeze. "The CIA is playing both sides. Meet at St. Agnes. Don't be late. The church door creaked. Lena's silhouette appearing under the moonlight filtering through the shattered stained glass. She wore a long black leather coat. A crossbody backpack filled with USB drives and hastily printed documents. Jax, she called softly. Hurrying down the aisle between the dust-covered pews, he stood up. Quickly hugging her, the familiar scent of lavender mixed with the smell of ink from newspapers. You look like you just ran a marathon, Jax said, his voice hoarse from thirst. Lena smirked, sitting down beside him, opening her backpack. Because I just did. The FBI is watching the office. Here. A file from a CIA insider. She plugged the USB into a small laptop, the screen lighting up to reveal her pale face. Reyes is not the target. He is a partner. The CIA is using the cartel to control the arms market, selling guns to the Middle East. Then using the money to fund operations against China. Ethan Crow is the link. Her words hit like lightning. Jax clenched his fists, his nails digging into his flesh. Ethan, the old friend, now a double agent. Evidence, he asked. His eyes glued to the screen where encrypted emails scrolled by secret contracts, Swiss bank transfers, and photos of Reyes shaking hands with a CIA agent at a villa in Mexico. Lena nodded, her voice low. My source is a CIA engineer who designed the tracking system. He sent this file before. Disappearing. Reyes is preparing a large shipment, guided missiles. Enough to change the balance at the border. The next target, a weapons depot in New York. Jax took a deep breath, a surge of anger rising like acid in his stomach. It was not just personal betrayal, this was the corruption of the entire system, where justice was sold for geopolitical interests. They spoke in hushed tones. Lena laying out the plan Jax would hack the weapons depot in New York, destroying the shipment before it reached Reyes. I will support you from afar, through the network of informants, she said, her eyes shining with determination. Jax nodded, for the first time in months, feeling not alone. But then, footsteps, light, professional, echoed from the side entrance. Jax turned sharply, drawing his Glock. But it was too late. The main door burst open. 3 shadowy figures rushed in like ghosts, professional assassins, dressed in tight black clothing, faces concealed, silenced guns gleaming under the moonlight. Get down, Jax shouted, pushing Lena down behind the pews. The first bullet struck the wooden seat just inches from his face. Splinters, flying. Chaos erupted in the once quiet sanctuary. Jax rolled. Firing back, the first shot hit the shoulder of the nearest assassin, who fell, his gun clattering to the stone floor. But the other 2 were quicker. One leaped over the altar, charging at Lena with a curved dagger. She screamed, backing away, her hands fumbling in her backpack for a small gun. Jax dashed down the aisle, his muscular frame twisting to dodge a volley of silenced bullets. He kicked over a row of pews, the splintering wood providing temporary cover. The second assassin blocked Jax's path, swinging the dagger with fluid movements like a sword dance. The blade grazed his arm, cutting deep, hot blood flowing freely. Jax gritted his teeth, countering with a straight punch to the man's throat. Hearing the sickening crack of breaking bones, the man staggered but managed to deliver a low kick to Jax's knee. Sharp pain shot up from the old desert wound. He buckled one leg but sprang back up, locking the man's arm with his own, throwing him down onto the floor. Jax's knife plunged into his chest, blood spraying, soaking the wall-mounted cross red. Lena. Run, he roared. But she was struggling with the first man. He had regained consciousness, choking her with his powerful arm. Jax charged forward, leaping over the rotting altar, his foot driving hard into the man's back. All 3 of them tumbling down. They rolled on the cold floor, bare-handed, their heavy breathing mingling with the sound of cracking wood. The larger assassin, muscles rippling beneath his black attire, punched Jax in the face with a thud. Stars exploded in front of his eyes, salty blood on his lips. Jax dodged the second punch, elbowing the man in the ribs. Hearing the sound of cracking bones, Lena seized the opportunity, pulling a small knife from her backpack, stabbing it into his thigh. He howled, releasing her, but quickly turned, slapping her against the wall. Her head hit hard, blood oozing from her forehead. Jax went berserk. He charged in, landing a hook to the man's jaw, teeth flying. The man fell but dragged Jax down with him, and they wrestled dangerously close to the edge of the church balcony, an escape route leading to the roof. "Jax!" Lena screamed, trying to get up. He pounded the man's face repeatedly, each blow like a hammer jaw. Nose, eyes, blood splattered everywhere. But the man still clawed at Jax, his nails scratching a line across his neck. They rolled out onto the balcony, the Los Angeles night wind howling in their ears. Below them, a deep abyss with cars like toys. Jax locked the man's neck with his thigh, squeezing tightly, his face flushed with effort. "For Sarah," he whispered. Twisting hard, the sound of breaking bones echoed sharply. The man went limp, falling off the balcony, his body crashing onto the roof of a car below, the alarm blaring loudly. Jax pulled Lena up onto the church roof, the strong wind blowing her hair. They panted, blood smeared all over them. "Are you okay?" he asked, his hand trembling as he wiped the blood from her forehead. Lena weakly nodded, but her eyes were fixed on the shattered backpack on the church floor, the USB and documents torn apart. A small grenade from the assassin had exploded. "The source is gone," she whispered, her voice breaking. Jax hugged her, looking out at the city of shimmering lights, now filled with darkness. From the pile of debris, a scrap of paper fluttered up to the roof. "Rays, New York. Depot 47. Dawn. A major target awaited." And they had no time left. Jax tightened his grip on the knife, knowing that saving Lena had saved his soul. But the hunt continued, bloodier than ever. The grey light of dawn crept through the skyscrapers of New York, painting the bustling streets in a reddish glow where yellow cabs zipped by like a river of metal. Jax Harlan sat in the economy-class cabin of a flight from Los Angeles, his shoulder still aching beneath his thick coat. The wound from the church rooftop now crudely stitched with black thread in an underground clinic. Lena had stayed behind, promising to watch from afar through her remaining network of sources. But the scrap of paper from his backpack, Reyes, Warehouse, 47, Dawn was his only guide. Jax looked out the airplane window as the Big Apple appeared below like a concrete monster, where neon lights concealed secrets darker than the Mexican desert. "Warehouse 47, he muttered, his hand tightening on the hilt of the dagger hidden in his boot. Reyes was moving his largest arms shipment yet guided missiles, enough to turn the border into a war zone, and Jax would stop him, even if it meant facing both the cartel and the CIA alone. The plane landed at JFK at 6 in the morning, the biting late autumn air seeping through the blazer he'd hastily thrown on. Jax rented an old black sedan and drove straight to the Brooklyn docks where massive containers were stacked like steel tombs, the smell of sea salt mingling with heavy machine oil. Warehouse 47 was on the outskirts, a derelict building with barbed wire fences and discreet cameras. He parked 100 meters away, observing through binoculars a few Mexican mercenaries in leather jackets, guns holstered under their arms, were loading wooden crates onto a truck. No sign of Reyes. He was smarter than that. But then, a sleek black limo pulled up. The door opened, and Victor Reyes stepped out, tall and imposing. his scarred face glinting in the early sun, a white suit clinging to his muscular frame, a smirk revealing yellowed teeth. "He's here," Jax whispered, his heart beating with the steady rhythm of a time bomb. But the plan changed quickly. Another truck pulled up, and Ethan Crowe stepped out lanky, with tousled brown hair under a fedora, his murky brown eyes scanning the area like a hunting wolf. Ethan clapped Reyes on the shoulder, whispered something, and then they both disappeared into the warehouse. Jax gripped the steering wheel, rage boiling inside him. His old friend, now a lackey, selling him out again. There was no time to hesitate, he needed to follow. But a charity gala tonight at the Plaza Hotel, a perfect cover for Reyes to meet with American kingpins, was a better opportunity. Jax drove around the block, quickly hacking into the warehouse's camera system on his laptop. The grainy feed showed the shipment being moved. Its destination, the gala. Tonight, he decided. Hitting the gas and speeding toward downtown Manhattan, the afternoon passed on the bustling streets of Fifth Avenue, where tourists jostled to shop under the pale sun. Jax checked his gear in a cheap hotel room. An elegant black suit concealed a suppressed Glock in a shoulder holster. A razor-sharp dagger was sheathed at his wrist, and a small smoke grenade was hidden in his pocket. His face in the mirror, a new scar on his cheek from La Sombra. Grey-blue eyes filled with shadows, was no longer ghost of the CIA, but a hunting phantom. He thought of Lena, of her last call. "Be careful, Jax. They know you're coming." But he wasn't afraid, only a burning desire to end it. The Plaza Hotel was resplendent under crystal chandeliers. The Border Support Charity Gala, a perfect cover, American businessmen in tuxedos, women in sparkling evening gowns, the sound of elegant laughter mingling with the clinking of champagne glasses. Jax slipped past security with a forged ticket, his tall frame blending into the crowd like a shark among minnows. The air was warm, thick with expensive perfume and cigar smoke. But beneath the glamour lay darkness. Reyes sat at a VIP table, surrounded by muscular bodyguards and a few disguised CIA agents. He drew closer, pretending to hold a glass of wine. His eyes locked on Reyes, who was laughing loudly, his scarred hand caressing a glass of cognac, whispering to an American man in a grey suit. Jax slipped into a side corridor leading to the VIP room, his steps silent on the thick red carpet. His heart pounded, but his breathing was slow, a lesson from the desert. The VIP room door was ajar, the sound of laughter drifting out. He pushed it open gently, drawing his Glock silently, ready to put a single bullet in Reyes's head. But inside, Ethan was standing beside him, holding a briefcase full of documents, the cartel's master plan to attack the Mexican border. With the CIA's covert backing, Jax. Ethan spun around, his eyes wide with horror at the sight of the familiar figure. Reyes sprang up, pulling a pistol from his jacket. But Jax was faster. He lunged, kicking the briefcase away, his Glock aimed squarely at Ethan's forehead. "You sold me out again," Jax snarled, his trigger finger trembling. The glass hallway outside shook as bodyguards rushed in, spraying machine gun fire through the glass door. Shards of glass exploded like crystal rain as Jax rolled for cover, pulling Ethan in front of him as a shield. "Run," he yelled. But Ethan struggled, punching Jax's shoulder wound. A sharp pain shot through him, and blood seeped out, staining his suit red. They burst into a long, cavernous glass corridor, the thud of their leather shoes echoing on the marble floor as bullets thudded into the walls. Jax fired back over his shoulder, taking down a guard with a shot to the knee, who collapsed, his gun skittering away. Ethan seized the opportunity, drew a pistol from his own holster, and fired at Jax. The bullet grazed his ear. Hot as fire, the firefight turned into a frantic chase through the plaza's maze of glass corridors. mirrors reflecting their distorted figures. Screams from the gala echoing in the distance. Jax leapt over the escalator railing, his body twisting to dodge a burst of machine gun fire from behind. He landed on the floor below, rolled, and shot out a large pane of glass. Shards rained down like snow, blinding the guards. Ethan followed, and the two came face to face in a hidden corner. Jax. "Stop. Reyes will kill us both if you don't listen," Ethan roared, his gun trembling. Jax tackled him, and they rolled on the blood and glass-strewn carpet. Ethan's punch connected with Jax's jaw, making him see stars. Jax countered with an elbow to his ribs. Hearing a crack, they grappled near the edge of a massive picture window overlooking Central Park, the night wind whistling through a crack. "What's the plan?" Jax snarled, choking Ethan, his dagger pressed against his throat, drawing a thin line of blood. Ethan coughed, his eyes filled with desperation. "A full-scale attack. The missile shipment hits Mexico next week. The CIA is using it to incite a border war, selling weapons to both sides. Reyes is a puppet. Spare me. Man, I have the access code for the warehouse." The confession cut like a knife. But Jax hesitated. Killing Ethan now would be easy, but the information could save thousands of lives. The sound of pounding footsteps grew louder as Reyes's guards closed in. Jax let go. Shoving Ethan through the broken window, he fell onto an awning below, rolling off and disappearing into the park's darkness. Jax threw the smoke grenade into the hallway, and thick white smoke billowed out. Providing cover, he bolted down the stairwell, heart pounding, blood dripping a long trail on the steps. Outside, police sirens wailed, the gala in chaos as panicked guests fled. Jax jumped into the sedan and peeled out into the New York night traffic, his hand trembling as he clutched the scrap of paper Ethan had hastily shoved into it, the access code for the armory. "I'm letting you go this time," he whispered, his eyes on the rearview mirror, where Reyes stood amidst the chaos, his scarred face twisted in fury. But this choice could be a mistake. Ethan was now a double-edged sword, and Mexico City awaited with its deadly shipment. A thick fog blanketed the winding streets of Mexico City at midnight, turning the ancient city into a damp, dark labyrinth. Jax Harlan sped through the narrow alleys in a stolen SUV, its engine roaring over the patter of rain on the roof. The access code from Ethan, a string of numbers glowing on his phone screen, led him to the outskirts, where Reyes's secret weapons factory lay hidden behind stained concrete walls and towering barbed wire fences. His shoulder still ached from the wound he'd taken at the plaza, blood seeping through the bandage. But the adrenaline from the New York firefight was still pumping, keeping his cold, grey-blue eyes unblinking. "The biggest shipment," he muttered, his hands gripping the rain-slicked steering wheel. Ethan had sold him out. But this information could be the key or the final trap. The factory emerged under the dim streetlights, a massive concrete block with smokestacks spewing black smoke, the smell of burnt metal and heavy machine oil hanging in the damp air. Jax parked 100 meters away, shut off the engine, and slipped through the fence like a ghost. He cut the barbed wire with a small pair of pliers hidden in his boot. Each small metallic snap, a warning from the darkness. Inside, the factory was an industrial hellscape, clattering assault rifle assembly lines, wooden crates of guided missiles stacked to the ceiling, and shadowy figures moving under flickering fluorescent lights. Reyes's mercenaries, scar-faced, in rain-soaked leather jackets, patrolled with AKs slung over their shoulders, their Spanish whispers mingling with the sound of rain drumming on the corrugated metal roof. Jax sneaked in through a side door, his steps light on the oil-stained concrete floor. Ethan's code unlocked the warehouse door, a soft beep, and he slipped into a pitch-black corridor that led to the storage room. His heart beat steadily, his breathing slow. He'd learned control during long nights in Kabul. Through a crack in the door, he saw Reyes. He was standing among his men, a cigar in his hand, his scarred face twisted under a pale yellow light. "This shipment will set the border on fire," Reyes growled, his voice low like thunder. "The CIA has paid. Ship it to New York before dawn." The men nodded, loading missile crates onto a truck as the pungent smell of gunpowder hit Jax's nostrils. Without hesitation, he pulled the smoke grenade from his pocket, pulled the pin, and tossed it through the gap. The canister rolled gently across the floor and detonated in a blinding white cloud, acrid smoke spreading like a poisonous fog. Shouts echoed as the mercenaries choked and coughed, firing blindly into the air. Jax burst in, his body twisting to dodge the first volley of bullets that shattered the concrete wall. He fired 2 shots from his suppressed Glock. The first took down the nearest man, the bullet piercing his chest as blood sprayed into the smoke. The second hit another in the shoulder, sending him sprawling, his gun clattering away. Ghost Reyes yelled, drawing his pistol, but the smoke obscured his view. Close-quarters combat erupted in the damp darkness. A mercenary charged at Jax from behind, swinging a machete that glinted under the flickering lights. Jax spun, dodged the blade as it whistled past his ear, searing hot, and delivered a low kick to the man's knee. The bone snapped with a sickening crack, and he crumpled. Jax plunged his dagger into the man's throat. Hot blood sprayed onto his face, salty on his lips. Gunshots rang out continuously. Bullets thudded into wooden crates, sending splinters flying. Jax rolled behind a piece of machinery and fired back. 3 shots took down 2 more men, their bodies falling in a heap amidst the scrap metal. Sweat and rain dripping from the metal roof soaked his shirt, his vision blurring from the smoke. But he pressed on, taking down a 4th with a punch to the jaw, teeth shattered, and the man collapsed unconscious. The mercenaries swarmed like a wolf pack. 10, 15 of them, firing machine guns through the smoke. Jax threw his second grenade. The explosion shook the factory, sending shrapnel flying, tearing one man's leg apart as he screamed in agony. He charged through, his dagger flashing, and slashed the wrist of the nearest gunman. Blood gushed out, and his weapon fell with a thud. A huge man rushed him with a battle axe. Jax dodged, the axe head burying itself in machinery with a clang, then countered with an elbow to the man's side. Hearing ribs crack, the man groaned but managed to punch Jax's shoulder wound. Searing pain shot through him like fire, and blood poured out freely. Jax gritted his teeth, locked the man in a chokehold with his muscular arm, squeezing until the man's face turned purple before snapping his neck. The dry crack echoed over the sound of the rain. He took down 3 more men in rapid succession, a hook kick to the jaw, a knife to the gut, and a short burst to the chest. The floor was slick with blood and oil. He slipped once, rolling to avoid a bullet that grazed his thigh. As the smoke began to clear, he saw Reyes running for a truck while his remaining men provided cover fire. "You're not getting away," Jax roared, charging after him, taking down the last 2 guards with covering fire. But Reyes spun around, pistol aimed, and fired a single shot. The bullet slammed into Jax's calf, a burning pain that sent him to his knees. Hot blood pooled on the floor beneath him. Reyes sneered, his scarred face contorting. "You're hard to kill, Ghost, but this is the end." At his command, the surviving men dragged Jax up, cuffed him with cold iron chains, and hauled him to an old iron cage in the corner of the factory, a relic from its wartime production days. The cage door slammed shut, and an electronic lock beeped as damp darkness enveloped him. Jax leaned against the rusty bars, panting, blood from his leg dripping into a puddle. Guards stood outside, guns aimed at him, but he didn't panic. His eyes scanned his surroundings, an old cage. A simple electronic lock, a small flaw in the hinge, and a loose electrical wire hanging from the ceiling. His intellect, Ghost's sharpest weapon, went to work. He took off a shoelace, using it like a hook, and fumbled until he snagged the loose wire. A quick tug, a flash of sparks, and the lock system flickered. He used a piece of metal from the floor, a broken bullet fragment, to pry at the hinge. Bit by bit, sweat mixing with blood. The rain outside masked the screech of metal. 5 minutes. Then 10. His shoulder throbbed. His leg was numb, but he didn't stop. Finally, the hinge gave way, and with a hard shove, the cage door creaked open. He rolled out, just in time to dodge a burst of fire from the surprised guard. Jax darted into the shadows, dagger in hand. Taking the guard down with a stab from behind, the blade pierced a lung, and he fell without a sound. The roar of a truck engine filled the air. Reyes was escaping, the shipment pulling out of the factory gate. Jax hopped into a nearby SUV and hit the gas, the tires spinning on the wet floor. The factory gate burst open, and the truck sped into the winding streets of the Mexico City outskirts, the torrential rain obscuring visibility. Jax stayed close, firing at the tires. The bullet hit, and the truck swerved but didn't stop. The chase was on vehicles tearing through narrow streets, headlights sweeping across graffitied walls, the panicked horns of civilian cars blaring. Reyes fired back from the truck's rear, a bullet shattering Jax's windshield and sending a blast of cold wind and rain into his face. Jax swerved to dodge, slamming into a roadside dumpster with a shriek of metal. The truck took a sharp turn into a dead-end alley, but Reyes leaped out and fled into the darkness on foot. Jax stopped the SUV and gave chase, limping on his wounded leg. But his determination burned bright. The winding street led to an abandoned night market, the smell of rotten food mixing with the rain. Reyes vanished behind a row of decaying stalls. But Jax knew the hunt wasn't over. The shipment was still out there, and Ethan the traitor was likely waiting in Miami to reconnect. Jax gripped his dagger and plunged into the darkness, the rain washing the blood from his face, but it couldn't wash away his thirst for justice. A drizzle pattered on the windshield, turning the Miami streets into streaks of water, reflecting pink and purple neon. Jax Harlan sped through Little Havana in a rented SUV, his right hand gripping the slick steering wheel. His left hand pressed against the gunshot wound in his calf from the Mexico City factory. The bleeding had stopped, but every jolt sent a sharp pain shooting up his leg, a reminder of the iron cage and the failed chase. Reyes had escaped. The missile shipment was still intact, but the access code Ethan had provided was now the key, a covert CIA headquarters on the outskirts of Miami, where the superiors he once swore loyalty to were laying a trap. "They're all bought," Jax muttered, his grey-blue eyes flashing under the streetlights. Lena had called from Los Angeles. "I've hacked the files. Meet me at the headquarters. But be careful. Jax, they know you're back." The covert headquarters was located beneath a dummy office building in the Dolphin Industrial Park, its entrance through a damp underground garage that smelled of machine oil and musty concrete. Jax parked in a dark corner, his leather jacket concealing his Glock and dagger, his scarred face obscured by a baseball cap. He slipped through a side door using Ethan's code. A soft beep sounded, and the steel door slid open. Inside was a labyrinth of sterile white hallways, flickering fluorescent lights, illuminating humming server rooms. The air was frigid from the air conditioning, mixed with the smell of stale coffee and the nervous sweat of night shift agents. Jax moved like a ghost, limping but silent, his heart beating steadily, a lesson from the Sonoran desert. Lena was waiting in a secondary control room, her slender frame swallowed by a grey hoodie, her laptop open on a metal desk. She spun around at the sound of the door, her green eyes wide with worry. "Jax, I thought you died in Mexico City." He gave her a quick hug, her familiar lavender scent soothing some of the pain. Reyes got away, but the shipments delayed. "Now, hack the system. Find the proof." Lena nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard, the screen flashing with scrolling lines of code. "I'm past the first layer of security. The files of your superior, Colonel Harlan Voss. Your adoptive father are full of emails with Reyes. They're selling weapons to incite a border war, making a fortune from government contracts." Jax clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. Voss, the man who had trained him at Quantico, who had promised to protect his family after Sarah's death, was the mastermind. The screen filled with evidence, encrypted emails, multi-million-dollar transfers from the cartel to offshore accounts, and the master plan, Phase 2, turn Miami into a hot zone. Activate sleeper agents. Jax gritted his teeth. The entire organization is compromised. Ethan was just a small piece. Lena typed a final command. Downloading the evidence files a massive trove of data on a global conspiracy, stretching from Mexico to China. Done, now we run. But just then, a piercing alarm blared, and red lights flashed throughout the hallway. "It's a trap," Jax roared, drawing his Glock and pulling Lena behind a server bank. The door burst open, and an elite kill squad stormed in, not regular CIA agents, but Reyes's mercenaries, their faces covered. M4 rifles aimed straight at them. Chaos erupted in the cramped space. Jax shoved Lena into a roll behind a server rack, dodging the first volley of bullets that thudded into the metal wall, sending sparks flying. He returned fire. 2 shots from his Glock took down the nearest assassin, bullets piercing his chest as he collapsed onto the control console, shaking Lena's laptop. "Get to the garage," he yelled, charging down the hallway, his body twisting to evade the continuous fire from an M4. A round grazed his shoulder, tearing through his jacket, and hot, fresh blood spurted out. Lena followed, a crossbody bag holding the USB with the evidence. But an assassin blocked her path, brandishing a sickle-bladed dagger that gleamed under the red lights. Jax spun around, leaped over the server rack, and kicked the man into the wall. His head slammed hard, and he fell unconscious. But the rest swarmed in 6, 7 men, moving with the professional precision of special ops. One lunged at Jax with a machete, the blade slashing horizontally. He dodged by a hair's breadth, the steel grazing his cheek and opening a new cut. The salty taste of blood on his lips. Jax countered, plunging his dagger into the man's thigh, hearing a pained scream echo. Blood sprayed out, staining the concrete floor red as the man collapsed. But he managed to fire 1 shot. The bullet slammed into Jax's hip, a searing pain that made him stagger. "Lena, the elevator," he roared, laying down cover fire that dropped 2 more men, their bodies piling up in the gunpowder-choked hallway. They dove into the emergency elevator, the doors slamming shut as bullets clanged against the metal. The elevator shot up to the roof, wind and rain lashing their faces when the doors opened. The roof of the underground headquarters was a wide concrete expanse, the city's neon lights glittering in the distance. A light drizzle making the surface slick. Lena panted, plugging the USB into a backup phone. "I'm uploading the file to a secure server. The evidence will get out." But a second elevator dinged. The assassination team had followed them up, guns aimed through the doors. Jax pulled Lena behind a large chimney and sniped from the rooftop. The first shot hit the lead man in the head, white brain matter splattering in the rain. The second shot shattered the second man's shoulder, sending him tumbling off the railing into the deep abyss below. The action climaxed on the roof. The wind howled in their ears. Rain lashed their eyes, and the crack of gunfire drowned out the sound of sirens in the streets below. An assassin vaulted over the railing. Rushing Jax with a dagger, they grappled on the edge of the roof, bare-handed, the rain making their grip slippery. The man punched Jax's hip wound, a pain as sharp as a knife cut, and he grunted, but locked the man's arm with his muscular forearm, wrestling him down to the wet floor. Jax's knife flashed, plunging deep into his chest, blood mixing with the rain to form a dark red stream. Lena screamed as a third man aimed at her. His pistol pointed at close range. Jax lunged, kicking the gun away, then threw a hook to the man's jaw, teeth shattered, and he staggered. Lena seized the opportunity, punching him in the throat, and Jax finished it with a bullet to the head. But they were outnumbered. 4 remaining men sniped from different corners of the roof. Bullets sweeping across like a metal rain. Jax pulled Lena into a roll behind a ventilation duct, a bullet embedding itself in the concrete just inches from his face, shrapnel stinging his skin. He threw his last smoke grenade, a blinding white explosion, the smoke mixing with the rain to obscure their vision. They sprinted to the railing and jumped to the garage roof below, landing hard with a jolt of pain. Jax's hip wound tore open, blood pouring out, his vision blurring. "Run," he whispered, pulling Lena into an SUV and slamming the gas, speeding into the rainy Miami night. The car sped through the wet streets, the sound of gunfire from the rooftop fading in the distance. Jax gasped for breath, his hand clutching his hip, blood staining the leather seat red. "The evidence?" "Is it safe?" Lena nodded, her eyes red-rimmed. "Upload complete. Now the world will know." But he knew Voss and Reyes would hunt them to the ends of the earth. The global conspiracy, from arms dealing to border wars, had been exposed. But the price was blood and solitude. Jax looked in the rearview mirror as the neon city faded, and whispered, "For Sarah. Now it's truly over." Reyes's mansion in Mexico awaited, along with the small team of ex-agents Lena had summoned. The final hunt, drenched in rain and fire, was about to begin. The torrential rain lashed their faces like 1,000 steel whips, turning the jungle along the Mexican cliffs into a swamp of thick mud and decaying leaves. Jax Harlan led the small team, his tall frame gliding through thorny bushes, his drenched leather jacket clinging to his solid physique. The hip wound from the CIA headquarters still seeping blood through the bandage. Behind him were Lena Reyes, her red hair a tangled mess under her hood, the backpack containing the evidence USB slung over her shoulder, and 3 rogue ex-agents: Marcus, a brawny sniper scarred from the war in Afghanistan; Kira, a slender hacker with sharp martial arts skills from her time as a SEAL; and Theo, a demolitions expert abandoned by the CIA in Iraq. They were ghosts like Jax, brought together by Lena's call after the file upload, justice for the betrayed. Victor Reyes' mansion perched precariously on the cliff, a solid concrete fortress with searchlights sweeping the jungle like a monster's eyes. Only half a kilometer away, but every step was a deadly challenge. Jax scanned the downpour, his binoculars blurry with water. A high-voltage electric fence sparked with blue light. Guards patrolled with machine guns on their shoulders, and infrared cameras glowed in the darkness. "Theo, disable the fence," he whispered into his radio, his hoarse voice barely audible over the thunder. Theo nodded, kneeling in the mud and opening his pack to retrieve a homemade jammer, a small metal box that hummed as electromagnetic waves spread out, causing the fence to flicker. Sparks flew, and the rain vaporized into white smoke. 3 minutes, Theo reported, his hands trembling from the cold. The team rushed through the gap, their bodies twisting to avoid the sharp barbed wire that tore through the air. Lena slipped in the mud, and Jax pulled her up, his hand squeezing hers for a second. Their eyes met, filled with a rare mix of anxiety and trust in this hell. The first trap struck without warning. A pressure mine exploded under Marcus's feet, sending mud and sand shooting up like a volcano. Metal shards embedding in his thigh. "Arg!" Marcus screamed, collapsing, his blood mixing with the rain to form a dark red stream. Jax rushed to him, dragging him behind a bush and pressing down on the wound. "Hang on!" Kira sniped from a distance, her Barrett rifle roaring. The first shot took down the nearest guard, the bullet piercing his head from 100 meters away, and he fell without a sound. But the alarm blared, and searchlights swept the jungle like the Grim Reaper's scythe. Mercenaries poured out of the mansion, 10, 15 men in glistening black raincoats, their AKs firing through the torrential rain. Bullets ripped through the air, thudding into trees and sending splinters of bark flying. The team launched a fierce counterattack. Jax led the charge, his body moving through the rain like a hunting panther, his Glock in hand firing 2 shots that dropped a guard, blocking their path. Bullets tore through his chest, blood spraying out with the rainwater. Lena, Kira, right flank Theo. "Cover Marcus!" he yelled, engaging in close combat with a large man who rushed him with a machete. The blade slashed horizontally, and Jax dodged narrowly, the rain blurring his vision, then countered with a low kick to the man's knee. Bone crunched in the mud. As the man fell, Jax plunged his dagger into his throat, hot blood splashing onto his face, its salty taste mixing with the rain. Another man appeared from behind. Firing his machine gun at point-blank range, Jax rolled in the slick mud, dodging the volley of bullets that ripped through the air. Then, fired upwards, the bullet hit the man's shoulder, and he collapsed, his gun clattering into the bushes. Lena and Kira worked in perfect sync. Lena quickly hacked the cameras with a handheld device, the small screen flashing as the system went dark. Kira sniped from behind a rock. Each shot like a thunderclap. One man fell with his head blown apart, white brain matter mixing with the mud. But there were too many soldiers, swarming in like a tide. Bullets sweeping through the jungle. A round grazed Lena's arm. Cutting deep, she gritted her teeth, pulled a small knife from its thigh sheath, and stabbed the nearest man in the leg. He screamed and fell. Jax rushed to help, grappling bare-handed with 2 men, a punch to one's jaw shattered teeth. Then he locked the other in a leg choke, squeezing until the man's face turned purple, breaking his neck with a dry snap. The rain washed the blood from his face, but not the rage. Reyes had destroyed his family. His sister Sarah had died in Reyes's human trafficking ring 8 years ago. They closed in on the mansion. Laying down heavy fire, Theo threw a smoke grenade, the thick white smoke mixing with the rain to provide cover. Marcus, though wounded, fired from the bushes, taking down 3 men with his pistol. The final battle erupted at the main entrance. The steel doors burst open, and guards from inside poured out, their machine guns roaring. Jax charged in, his body twisting to dodge bullets, firing continuously to drop 2 men. Bullets thudded into their chests, and their bodies piled up on the blood-stained stone steps. Kira vaulted over the railing, kicked an AK from a man's hands, breaking his wrist, then stabbed him in the stomach. Lena followed, using her laptop as a makeshift shield, her pistol taking down a second man. The sound of gunfire drowned out the thunder as the mansion shook like a war zone. Jax stormed into the grand hall, the crystal chandelier shattering from a stray bullet, the marble floor slick with rain and blood. Reyes was waiting at the far end of the hall, tall in a now drenched white suit, a pistol in his hand, his scarred face twisted under the dim yellow light. "Ghost, you're harder to kill than I thought," he growled. Firing a shot, the bullet seared past Jax's ear. He charged forward, dodging a second volley of bullets, his body vaulting over an overturned wooden table. They grappled barehanded in the middle of the hall. Reyes punched Jax's hip wound, a pain as sharp as a knife cut, and he grunted but locked his muscular arm around Reyes's neck. "You killed Sarah," my sister, Jax roared, his eyes bloodshot with fury. Reyes sneered, shoving him into a wall and punching him repeatedly. "The cartel spares no one. She got in the way, that's on you." "You stupid agent," Jax surged up, delivering a hook kick to Reyes's jaw, teeth shattered, and he staggered. They rolled on the floor, Jax's dagger flashing as it slashed across Reyes's chest, tearing through his suit, dark red blood spreading. Reyes countered, his machete grazing Jax's shoulder, ripping flesh. The pain was searing, but Jax didn't stop. He locked Reyes's arm, wrestled him down, and pressed his knee into his chest. "It's over," Jax whispered, the knife at his throat, blood dripping from the steel blade. In the hall, the gunfire had stopped. Kira had taken down the last guard with a clean neck snap. Lena and Theo were dragging Marcus inside, his wound crudely bandaged. Reyes coughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "The CIA. They'll hunt you. Voss is the mastermind." Jax tightened his grip, but then paused, not to spare him, but to let him live as a witness. A single punch to the jaw knocked Reyes unconscious, and he stood up, panting amidst the wreckage. The team escaped through a back door, the rain still lashing down, the mansion burning brightly behind them from a final grenade. Jax held Lena close in the off-road vehicle as it sped down the cliffside, his hands gripping the steering wheel. "Sarah." Justice. But Reyes was alive, and Voss was in Washington, D.C., the real enemy. The hunt wasn't over, it had just changed direction, drenched in blood and rain. The Washington, D.C. sky was as grey as a traitor's face, heavy clouds hanging low over the stark white government buildings. Jax Harlan sped through the crowded streets of the National Mall in a beat-up rental car, the chilly autumn wind whistling through a crack in the windshield, carrying the scent of decaying leaves and exhaust fumes. The hip wound from Reyes's mansion still throbbed, dried blood forming a black scab under his shirt. But he didn't stop to dress it. Reyes was down, left unconscious in the rubble on a Mexican cliff, alive only to serve as a witness in an international court, thanks to the evidence Lena had uploaded. But the true mastermind, Colonel Harlan Voss, his adoptive father, the man who had trained him to be Ghost, was hiding in a secret government building under Capitol Hill. "Voss," Jax whispered, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Reyes's words before he passed out echoed, "He's the puppet master, the CIA, the cartel, it's all his game." Jax had split from the team at the Mexico City airport, Lena had cried, hugging him one last time. "Don't die, Jax. I'll be waiting for you in Los Angeles." But he was alone, as always. A ghost against the world. The government building came into view in the twilight, a formidable block of marble with towering white columns, concealing the underground entrance to Voss's office. Jax parked in a nearby park, blending in with the tourists taking pictures in front of the Lincoln Memorial. He wore a light grey suit, sunglasses hiding his scarred, blue-grey eyes, a backpack with a backup USB, and a concealed dagger under his jacket. No gun. Security was too tight. He'd have to use his wits and his hands. The last access code from Ethan, who had since disappeared after the Plaza incident, opened a side door. A soft beep sounded amidst the city's noise, and a steel door slid open. Inside was a stark white corridor, fluorescent lights reflecting off the cold concrete walls. The smell of old paper mixing with the scent of coffee from a distant conference room. Jax moved silently, limping but swift, his heart beating with the steady rhythm of a time bomb. Voss's office was deep underground, accessed via an encrypted elevator. Jax quickly hacked it with a device Lena had given him, The small screen flashed, and the elevator descended with a low hum. The doors opened to reveal the final corridor. 2 agents stood guard, pistols concealed under their black suit jackets. They spun around, hands reaching for their weapons. But Jax was faster. He lunged at the first man. A straight punch to the throat, making a sickening thud. The man choked, crumpling to the floor. The second agent drew his gun, but Jax pivoted, kicking his wrist and breaking it. The gun clattering on the marble floor. "Voss knew you were coming." The man groaned, blood trickling from his mouth. Jax choked him, whispering, "He taught me how." A clean snap. The dry crack of a breaking neck. He didn't like killing former colleagues, but Voss had turned them all into tools. The door to Voss's office swung open, the air heavy with the smell of Cuban cigars and leather armchairs. Voss sat behind a gleaming walnut desk, a tall 60-year-old with neatly cut silver hair. His sharp brown eyes now clouded under the desk lamp. He wore a grey suit with a loosened tie, a glass of whiskey in his hand, a smirk revealing perfectly white teeth, the same smile that had once comforted Jax after Sarah's death. "Ghost, you're still hard to kill," Voss said, his voice as deep and warm as a father's, but laced with deceit. Jax stepped inside, his dagger glinting in the dim yellow light, and closed the door behind him. "Father. Why did you do it, Sarah? Died because of Reyes. Because of the cartel you created. The CIA. The organization you built. Now it betrays everyone." Voss chuckled, standing up, his frame still powerful from his training days at Quantico. "Justice. That's an illusion. Son. The cartels. The weapons. The border wars. It's all to keep America strong. Reyes was just a puppet. You're too idealistic. Just like Sarah. She got in the way. That's on you. Not me." Rage rose like acid in Jax's stomach. He lunged, knife raised high. But Voss was surprisingly fast. He pulled a pistol from a desk drawer and fired a shot that grazed Jax's shoulder. Hot blood spraying out. The pain was sharp. But Jax didn't stop. He tackled Voss over the desk, sending papers flying. The whiskey glass shattering on the floor. They rolled around the now wrecked luxury office. Voss punched Jax's hip wound, the searing pain making him groan. Jax locked his arm, pressing the knife to his throat, the steel blade making a shallow cut. Voss's blood staining his collar dark red. "Finish it!" Voss roared, struggling, punching Jax in the face. Stars exploded before his eyes, the salty taste of blood on his lips. Jax squeezed tighter, remembering Kabul, remembering Sarah laughing under the Miami sun 8 years ago. "You taught me about justice. Now you've destroyed it." The fight was relentless. Voss shoved Jax into a bookshelf, sending books raining down. But he sprang back up, delivering a hook kick to his jaw, teeth shattered. And Voss staggered. He fired a second shot, the bullet slamming into the bookshelf just inches from Jax's chest. Splinters flying. Jax charged, and they grappled near the glass window overlooking Capitol Hill, glittering in the sunset. Their hands now covered in blood. Voss clawed at him, his nails digging into Jax's arm, but he locked his muscular arm around his neck, squeezing tight. For Sarah, Voss's face turned purple, his eyes bulging, but he whispered, "Kill me, and you become an enemy of America. The evidence, it will be buried." Jax hesitated, the knife trembling at his throat. Killing Voss would be easy. But true justice was about exposure, not blind revenge. The big surprise hit. An alarm blared, and the door burst open. Voss's special ops team swarmed in, guns pointed everywhere. "Get him!" Voss yelled hoarsely. using the chance to shove Jax away. He rolled, dodging the first volley of bullets that thudded into the floor, sending sparks flying. Jax threw his dagger. The steel blade sank into the nearest agent's shoulder, and he collapsed. He crashed through the glass window, shards of crystal cutting his skin, and fell onto the awning below. The autumn wind whistled in his ears as Jax rolled, leaped into the open air, and landed hard on the grass of the National Mall. Gunshots followed, but he ran in a zigzag pattern through the panicked tourists. Disappearing into the crowd, Jax escaped Washington, D.C. on a night train to the Canadian border. His backpack containing the backup USB, the evidence Voss couldn't bury. Voss lived, but was arrested shortly after. As the file went global, the cartel collapsed. The CIA was shaken, and Voss stood trial for treason. But Jax chose exile, a nameless ghost in Europe, watching from afar. Justice was fragile. Just as Voss had once taught him, it's not perfect, but it must exist. Jax sat on the train, staring out the pitch-black window, his hand touching a new scar. His phone vibrated a message from Lena. "I'm in Paris waiting for you. Come home. Ghost, we can rebuild." He smirked. And for the first time in 8 years, hope crept through the darkness. The hunt was over, but the journey for justice had only just begun.